And so I spent most of my early years in really pleasant weather all the time, splashing in waves and things. So that helped. As I get older, and certainly in this job, what helps me a lot is taking the long view on things. I think so much pessimism and so much stress arises out of looking at things in this very narrow here and now. But the day-to-day sort of ups and downs and swings, it's like the weather. I mean, okay, get an umbrella sometimes you take off your jacket. But if you can keep your eye on the long view, not only does that relieve stress, it also allows you to make better decisions. The things that last, the things that are important, usually have to do with how did you behave? How did you other people? Did you work as hard as you could have? Did you do your best? The things that you have control over. When I'm on my deathbed, the things I will remember will be, walking a 4-year-old Malia to the park. I'm not going to remember some headline. I think that's helpful. But that's just me. It's mostly the Hawaii thing.
What kind of legacy would you like to leave in the African American community?
It's hard for me to say what I've meant to the African American community. I can say what Michelle's meant to the African American community. Michelle's the bomb. So what concretely I can say is that the work this administration's done has made a difference in the lives of people who are struggling. And those folks are disproportionately people of color. So whether it's the Affordable Care Act and making sure people have health care, or it's expanding Pell Grants, or it's programs to deal with low-income communities to help them rebuild and provide better job training. In each of those areas, there are a lot of people who are better off than they otherwise would have been because of the concrete actions that we took. All of you are young enough that in some ways it's plausible to you maybe that race relations have gotten worse, but actually it's a testimony to how much better they've gotten that this shocks you. Evidence that there may be racial bias in our criminal justice system. You're hurt, whereas 25, 30 years ago, that was a given. So sometimes progress involves improvement, but then raising expectations. Things are a lot better, but now our expectations are a lot higher. Look, we got a long way to go when it comes to racial issues. History can go backwards as well as forwards. But the overall trajectory, I think, is positive. And the caution I have for this cohort, because there's probably some self-selection going on. You guys are, if you're interning here with Obama, then you're probably you're more likely to have certain political views. So I just want to caution all of you to make sure that in wanting to improve race relations, you don't become so rigid and sensitive in terms of your own views that instead of opening up dialogue, you sort of harden lines and divisions. All right, guys, turn. Yes, sir, right here.
How do you deal with, knowing when to compromise? How have you learned how to compromise and how to more or less stick to your guns?
Maybe my rule of thumb is if the issue we're working on, I've got a particular objective, and the compromise thwarts that objective, then that's a bad compromise. if the compromise makes things better, but just not as good as I think they need to be, then my instinct is that's a good compromise. And probably the best example of this is the debate we had around healthcare. Once we get the structure in place, it's like a starter home, and it would be nice if we had, granite, countertops in the kitchen, but we can't afford those yet. There's no porch, but it beats sleeping outside. And I think I've been proven right on this because I've got 20 million people who have health insurance who didn't have it before. Now, it's far from our ideal, but every single step in social progress in this country has started with a starter home. The political process in this country is incremental. Democracies of our sort require reform as a general proposition and not revolution. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with better. Because you hold out for the best, and that means that whoever was going to be helped by better, doesn't have health care that year, or isn't getting as much help on going to college as they otherwise would have. All right, well, you guys have been great. I always say this to all of you, so I even though it's boilerplate, I'm going to repeat it. Don't get bored. Don't get cynical. You guys are the most privileged people at the most prosperous, secure period in human history. And so, no griping and no moping. The possibilities of what you can do are enormous. And that doesn't mean, becoming president involves a lot of luck. Becoming, Steve Jobs or, Quentin Tarantino, that requires there's a certain amount of breaks that you get. It's not because you're so much better than everybody else. And being Picasso is because you're better than everybody else. But a lot of times it's just, happenstance or things worked out. But being useful and having a satisfying life and making a contribution, that is entirely within your control. Orient yourself towards having an impact and making a difference. And you will. And you'll be happy doing it. All right? What do I got here? You've just been waiting for this. Oh, this is so nice. Look at this. And like glitter on the sides. You got help, didn't you? Your parents helped you. It's just like the science projects.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is so nice. Well, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, happy birthday, almost.
All right. Almost. Good luck, everybody. You're going to do great.
I believe my record as president, my leadership in the world, my vision for America's future.
On behalf of everyone.
There was blood pouring everywhere, and yet, in a certain way, I felt very safe because I had God on my side. I felt that. The amazing thing is that prior to the shot, if I had not moved my head at that very last instant, the assassin's bullet would have perfectly hit its mark, and I would not be here tonight. Let me begin this evening by expressing my gratitude to the American people for your outpouring of love and support following the assassination attempt at my rally on Saturday. As you already know, the assassin's bullet came within a quarter of an inch of taking my life. So many people have asked me, what happened? Tell us what happened, please. And therefore, I will tell you exactly what happened, and you'll never hear it from me a second time because it's actually too painful to tell. It was a warm, beautiful day in the early evening, in Butler Township in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Music was loudly playing, and the campaign was doing really well. I went to the stage, and the crowd was cheering wildly. Everybody was happy. I began speaking very strongly, powerfully, and happily, because I was discussing the great job my administration did on immigration at the southern border. We were very proud of it. Behind me and to the right was a large screen that was displaying a chart of border crossings under my leadership. The numbers were absolutely amazing. In order to see the chart, I started to, like this, turn to my right and was ready to begin a little bit further turn, which I'm very lucky I didn't do, when I heard a loud whizzing sound and felt something hit me really, really hard on my right ear. I said to myself, wow, what was that? It can only be a bullet. And moved my right hand to my ear, brought it down. My hand was covered with blood, just absolutely blood all over the place. I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack, and in one movement proceeded to drop to the ground. Bullets were continuing to fly as very brave Secret Service agents rushed to the stage, and they really did, they rushed to the stage. These are great people, at great risk, I will tell you, and pounced on top of me so that I would be protected. There was blood pouring everywhere, and yet, in a certain way, I felt very safe because I had God on my side. I felt that. The amazing thing is that prior to the shot, if I had not moved my head at that very last instant, the assassin's bullet would have perfectly hit its mark, and I would not be here tonight. We would not be together. The most incredible aspect of what took place on that terrible evening in the fading sun was actually seen later. In almost all cases, as you probably know, and when even a single bullet is fired, just a single bullet, and we had many bullets that were being fired, crowds run for the exits or stampede, but not in this case. It's very unusual. This massive crowd of tens of thousands of people stood by and didn't move an inch. In fact, many of them bravely, but automatically stood up looking for where the sniper would be. They knew immediately it was a sniper, and then began pointing at him. You can see that if you look at the group behind me. That was just a small group compared to what was in front. Nobody ran, and by not stampeding, many lives were saved. But that isn't the reason that they didn't move. The reason is that they knew I was in very serious trouble. They saw it. They saw me go down. They saw the blood and thought, actually most did, that I was dead. They knew it was a shot to the head. They saw the blood. And there's an interesting statistic. The ears are the bloodiest part. If something happens with the ears, they bleed more than any other part of the body. For whatever reason, the doctors told me that. I said, why is there so much blood? He said, it's the ears. They bleed more. So we learned something, but this beautiful crowd, they didn't want to leave me. They knew I was in trouble. They didn't want to leave me. And you can see that love written all over their faces. Incredible people. They're incredible people. Bullets were flying over us, yet I felt serene. But now the Secret Service agents were putting themselves in peril. They were in very dangerous territory. Bullets were flying right over them, missing them by a very small amount of inches. And then it all stopped. Our Secret Service sniper, from a much greater distance and with only one bullet used, took the assassin's life, took him out. I'm not supposed to be here tonight. Not supposed to be here. No. Thank you. But I'm not. And I'll tell you, I stand before you in this arena only by the grace of Almighty God. In watching the reports over the last few days, many people say it was a providential moment. Probably was. When I rose surrounded by Secret Service, the crowd was confused because they thought I was dead, and there was great, great sorrow. I could see that on their faces as I looked out. They didn't know I was looking out. They thought it was over, but I could see it. I wanted to do something to let them know I was okay. I raised my right arm, looked at the thousands and thousands of people that were breathlessly waiting, and started shouting, "Fight, fight, fight." Thank you. Once my clenched fist went up, and it was high into the air, you've all seen that, the crowd realized I was okay and roared with pride for our country like no crowd I have ever heard before.
In the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America. So, our mother, Shamala Harris, had one of her own, and I miss her every day, and especially right now. And I know she's looking down smiling. I know that. So my mother was 19 when she crossed the world alone, traveling from India to California with an unshakable dream to be the scientist who would cure breast cancer. When she finished school, she was supposed to return home to a traditional arranged marriage. But as fate would have it, she met my father, Donald Harris, a student from Jamaica. They fell in love and got married, and that act of self-determination made my sister Maya and me. Growing up, we moved a lot. I will always remember that big Mayflower truck packed with all our belongings, ready to go to Illinois, to Wisconsin, and wherever our parents' jobs took us. My early memories of our parents together are very joyful ones. A home filled with laughter and music, Aretha, Coltrane, and Miles. At the park, my mother would say, "Stay close." But my father would say, as he smiled, "Run, Kamala, run. Don't be afraid. Don't let anything stop you." From my earliest years, he taught me to be fearless. But the harmony between my parents did not last. When I was in elementary school, they split up, and it was mostly my mother who raised us. My mother was a brilliant, 5-foot tall, brown woman with an accent.